Which is better, a book, a video game, or a film? I'm going to explore that today. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I'm going to start with the obvious. They're all great mediums. They've all got things going for them. The real question is, when it comes down to it, which one's better? I'm going to start with book, and I've got Shadow and Bone here, which is a Netflix series, so it's kind of a good one to go into this with. Now, obviously, I have the book, but I've neither read the book nor watched the series. New Year's resolution for next year, I'm going to read this in January. This is January's book. So hopefully it's good and I can get into it. Hopefully I've found my prodigal series and get me back into reading. But I'm gonna I had a plan of where that sentence was gonna lead into, and I've lost what it was gonna be. So I'm instead going to just mention the obvious downfall of a book, which is also kind of its silver lining as well, but that is that its atmosphere is entirely up here. So, I mean, the story is all laid out for you from A to B, and there is no variation because the written word does not allow for that. If you want interactivity, this is what you want. I mean, not the Switch specifically, but video games. Games are what you want if you want an interactive story. All other forms of medium are not interactive, so that's actually, we'll do that. The only interactive form of medium. This one does not have visuals attached, meaning that you can assign visuals to it. It does not have music to set a specific mood, so the mood can be however you interpret it. Now, on the plus side, if you're just relaxing and you're engaging with the book and the book's written well enough, you should be able to get basically the same mood and emotions within a particular scene or from a particular line of dialogue as most other people. However, if you are not in a great mood, or you're in a different mood to somebody else, you may interpret the same thing in a different way. Similarly, your particular experiences with something might be different from someone else's, and therefore you see the same thing differently because of that. There might be something in this book that triggers you but not in another, and yet someone else is not triggered by this but is triggered by that other. It really sort of comes down to that. What both of these have in common, though, is that film continually gets it wrong when it comes to adapting a video game or a novel into that medium, into the visual storytelling medium that is cinema or television, depending on where you want to go. I will make arguments for both and treat them as separate mediums, because one is episodic and can, for over a whole season, equal a longer runtime than a single film, which has to be a self-contained story in and of itself. So I'm going to talk about film first, because that's sort of where most of my knowledge when it comes to the industry lies. But basically, we've got to let's take Shadow and Bone for example, which is it is a series in the, I don't even know if this is supposed to be part of it. Okay, so it's got 308 pages in total before the acknowledgements. So 308 pages. If we took that and just word for word put that onto the screen, we would average out somewhere near 308 minutes, which, when you do the calculations, would make this one book a 5-hour film, which no one's going to sit down for. Turn it into a series, make the episodes 45 minutes, that makes 4 episodes equal 3. Suddenly you've got an 8-episode series. Done. You want to flesh it out a little bit more, add a little bit of creative license, you can easily stretch that out to your 13 episodes. That is typical for like a Netflix season. So quite easily done. And then you get, the story and potentially a little bit more. And then obviously any sequels would be season 1, season 2, season 3. It kind of pans out well for television with novels. Video games are just never going to work as a visual storytelling medium in film, because it's already a visual storytelling medium, but it's interactive. Anyone who thinks, let's take this thing that has something and take that core concept of the interactivity away from it and just present them with this, hopefully they'll like it, is mad. That's why Free Guy was so successful. It wasn't about a pre-existing IP, it was about the culture surrounding video games. It had cameos from real-world streamers, and like, it's generally considered to be one of the best films about video games. It itself is not a video game film. If you want a video game film, play the video game and watch the cutscenes. Done. If you're really wanting to just watch something and you want that authentic video game story, take the cutscenes off of YouTube and edit them together. Make your own film out of it. It's the only real way you're going to be able to get, because then at least the company that made the video game made your film, plus you had some help, which still even then has that interactive element. So video game films are just never going to work. Sad fact. Novels of this size or larger, not going to work. You are going to want something that is let's see, 120 is 2 hours, so if we go 150 max for 2.5 hours, right? Alright, now, that page 150. Of this entire book, that much is a film's run length. So all of that gets taken out, which obviously means maybe a significant character gets cut out for a film version, or maybe a significant plot point for a side character story arc in this book, which doesn't become significant until this one gets cut out, and maybe they have to reinsert, or come up with some other creative licensed way of allowing that character to attain that thing at a later point when it's going to be relevant within that film. Because while books can put something in here and not have to use it until much later on, kind of like real life, films need to be self-contained with just enough lingering that it leaves you leaving the theatre wanting more, which is obviously what film production companies want, because they want you to want more, so that they'll make it, when they make it a film, you will go and see it at the box office, at the cinema, because the box office is how they make their money. That's what they want. So if this was going to be made into a film, it's already a series, but if it was going to be made into a film, you'd be looking at 2 films instead, and they both have to be 2.5 hours long, or you turn the one book into 3 films, suddenly you have 3 trilogies exploring that universe, which, yeah, when you think about that, you're looking there at, it's what, 308 pages, so you're looking at roughly an hour 40 a piece for the films, which breaks down to about 50 minutes per episode, each book making 6 episodes, which again, it just makes putting it into TV rather than film a lot more understandable. The one thing I don't have represented here by physical evidence other than film, obviously, is comic books, and that's a different thing entirely, because comic books already have the predetermined storyline and visuals. It's just still imagery. When making a film, there is a process called storyboarding, where they actually essentially draw what could essentially be the comic book version. So if you open up a comic book and then go, okay, cool, tear out this page, here's the storyboard, tear out the next page, there's the storyboard. You can just open a comic book and panel for panel equate that to shot for shot of that same story. So comic books and graphic novels and stuff, film, novels, TV, video games, leave them as they are. You can, if you wanted to, make a novel, decide to take that and the imagery that is in your head for it and make that into a graphic novel, thereby giving this over to the storyboarding process, it's still, you know, because comic books are generally shorter and they are also episodic, you'd only be doing sort of a chapter at a time, meaning that your films would just be your episodes. You know what I mean? So it can kind of, comic books sort of sit in the middle of it. They can be adapted either way and they will work either way. It's kind of why we're in that, and the fact that a lot of the people who grew up with the X-Men and the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films are now, you know, adults. I mean, the first Blade movie didn't come out until 2 years after millennials stopped being born. So it's really just been, our entire childhood has been the X-Men and the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films. Get to a certain age, you can go back and watch the Blade movies, Daredevil, Elektra, the Hulk, the 2003 Hulk film, and then the MCU. Obviously during that time, the Dark Knight trilogy, and then the DCEU. So it's just sort of been, we've grown up with it, so we're fans of the franchise because it's what we've grown up with. So of course it's going to be popular because we're now positioned nicely to be the major component of the target audience for those films. Some of us, even particularly older millennials, have their own kids now as well and are introducing it to that, which we're starting to see now because they're introducing, at least in MCU, introducing new, like a new generation of heroes in that. But we're not here to talk about the MCU. All in all, which is better? Is it video games? Is it novel? Is it comic? Is it TV? Is it film? It's all of them. I kind of hope I've made my point here that there are ways to do a good adaptation of something. You can take something from one medium and put it into another. I mean, the written word in books and comic books, because you actually have to concentrate on reading it, music doesn't really play a factor, but video games and your other, you know, your digital mediums as opposed to your physical mediums. Your digital mediums can have music playing to help expand the world and make it feel alive and more lived in, whereas you have to sort of, you know, in your physical, in your literary mediums, you get a lot more exposition and what is the character thinking to really sort of understand the character. So it really comes down to, if you're writing a story and trying to figure out what medium to put it into, really comes down to what is the thing you want to explore. Do you want to explore the world, or do you want to explore a character? Now obviously if you're exploring a character, you're exploring how they interact with the world. If you want to explore a world, you are simply taking your character through the sort of highlights of that world, and in that way your protagonist becomes essentially the empty vessel for which to put the audience into. Obviously you want to give your character some personality so they're not bland, but you want it to sort of be an everyman type so that anybody can put themselves in that shoes because they identify themselves with, you know, a particular trait of that character, and and it is through that character's eyes that they are then exploring your world. Obviously, video games do this very well because you can actually decide where you're going to go and what parts you're going to explore at which times. Whereas film and TV, you're just sort of part of the group and don't really have a vote. You're just following the group around as they sort of give you a tour of the world. Your literary mediums are, as I said before, your character exploration, because you get to explore what motivates them, what are their ideals, what are their bonds, what are their flaws, what's their personality, how do they react to sudden negativity, how do they react to sudden positivity, like can they take a compliment, are they, do they frighten easily, all that sort of stuff. And you get to sort of really hone in on what makes this character unique but also incredibly relatable, as opposed to show us the spectacle of this world. And if you are somehow able to perfectly balance both, chances are you're an author or a writer of some kind. But yeah, that's gonna be my video, I think. In conclusion, basically, I think they all have positives, they all have negatives. I mean, I would love to be able to, I think I might actually, while I'm reading this, I might see if I can find the Shadow and Bone Netflix score on Spotify, just to throw myself into the world a little bit while I'm reading. But otherwise, I mean, just had a sudden thought that I continue this video with, but reading a book as opposed to listening to an audiobook is completely different. Again, because instead of being able to create your own voices for how that character sounds, you just get, this is what the character sounds like from whoever's reading the book. And I think that's why I don't want to use audiobook services. But what can you do? But anyway, that is my video. If you are new here, hello, welcome. Please hit the subscribe button for me. It would be greatly appreciated. And while you're up there, go ahead and ring that notification bell as well. Turn on those push notifications so you can be kept up to date when I upload new videos. If you enjoyed this one, give it a big thumbs up. That'd mean a whole heap. And until next time, guys, keep your head screwed on.